The USA. A nation boasting the richest history of any. From presidents being assassinated to being the epicenter of global financial meltdowns. From spearheading global conflicts to landing the first man on the moon. It's ascended to become the unrivaled global superpower. But in recent years, the dollar's unrivaled hegemony has come under threat. Chinese economic activity has exploded over the last couple of decades, catapulting it into the heart of the global economy. In recent years, it's spearheaded an emerging pack of countries determined to challenge the economic dominance of the United States by targeting the dollar. The question is, does this represent the beginning of the end for the mighty US dollar, and consequently, America's reign as the world's preeminent superpower? At the end of the Second World War, all the world's major economies met at Bretton Woods to decide what the world's new economic system would look like in the aftermath of World War II.
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 allied and associate countries arrived for the opening of the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. Invited by President Roosevelt to the first major world financial meeting since the London Conference of 1933, they will work in the seclusion of this White Mountains resort.
During the Second World War, the US essentially became the manufacturer of the world, producing weapons and goods for the Allied war effort. The Allies quickly ran out of money to pay for these goods, so started paying with their national gold reserves. This meant that by the end of the war, the US held the majority of the world's gold. Prior to World War II, countries had pegged their individual currencies to gold, known as the gold standard. At Bretton Woods, they all decided that in the absence of gold, they were going to peg the currencies to the US dollar instead, making the US dollar the world's reserve currency. In the decades that followed Bretton Woods, a settled economic system emerged, where both the dollar and the US dominated the global economy. But since the turn of the century, the US economic monopoly has faced increasing competition, which in turn has turned up pressure on the US dollar and its position as the world's #1 currency. South Africa, Saudi Arabia, India, Malaysia. These are amongst some of the countries that have become increasingly disgruntled with the sway that the US dollar has over global affairs. This assault on the US dollar has been spearheaded by two men, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. The 21st century has been a century of economic boom for China. It's transformed from a near feudal economy just decades ago to a global economic superpower. China's booming economy has steadily been eating away at the US economic dominance that emerged following World War II. China has not only replaced the US as the world's largest exporting nation, but has seen both its growth in exports and imports outpace the rest of the world combined. As the post-COVID economic reality emerges, the world faces its modern-day Bretton Woods moment, deciding what the world's new economic order is going to look like. Russia's invasion of Ukraine presented China with a unique opportunity. With sanctions blocking Russia from accessing the Western economic system, Russia was left in the wilderness. Xi Jinping used this as an opportunity to expand his crusade against the dollar. President of Brazil made a state visit to Beijing, where he made calls for a reduced reliance on the US dollar for global trade. Malaysia's PM made a similar visit just months later. When finance ministers from Asia's biggest economies met in April, they discussed making more settlements in local currencies. Saudi Arabia, one of the world's largest oil exporters, suggested it was open to pricing oil in Chinese yuan. In order to bypass US sanctions, India has also been settling oil purchases from Russia in non-dollar currencies. So the question is Is it time for the US to start getting concerned?
The people of this nation have spoken.
So, what would happen if the US dollar was to fall? The US trade deficit, which is the difference between income and expense for both the US government and the US economy, would become impossible to sustain. The US government and corporate America run gigantic deficits. The dollar's current position as the world's most in-demand currency, the US can use sanctions to freeze any country's access to the dollar. Not only can the US use this to target hostile nations, like it has with Russia, but it can also target allies of hostile nations. The dollar is fundamental in sustaining the US position as the world's most powerful nation. Not only is the dollar an unmatched economic tool, but also a diplomatic asset for projecting US influence. This is why any nation wishing to usurp the US as the sole global superpower must first usurp the US dollar as the world's currency. The reality is that the position of the US dollar didn't just happen overnight. It was a culmination of work across centuries of American history, building an economic and geopolitical platform that was suitable for a global currency to sit on. Just as the US dollar didn't replace the British pound in a matter of months or years, whatever is destined to replace the dollar is going to take a concerted effort across many decades to do so.
Prices declined in July for the first time in more than 2 years. People and businesses are not spending.
Russia's recent crusades into foreign lands,
Most developed countries saw a boom in consumer spending.
or Iranian proxies attacking key global maritime trade routes, nor China's seemingly endless economic growth of recent years changes the reality that the dollar is and will remain for some time the most accessible, stable, and convenient currency to conduct global trade.
Thank you very much for joining us today.